Gary Breen, good morning to you.
Morning, lads.
Is Brendan Rodgers going to be successful?
Listen, I think he's certainly a quality manager and everything is set up there. It has surprised me, not only the timing of leaving Celtic, where he's on the cusp of something special in terms of winning some more trophies as such to go over so many he has already. But I don't know. I always felt that Brendan Rodgers was desperate to get back to the Premier League. I think a lot of people will probably look at Leicester and think to leave Celtic for Leicester just shows you the financial muscle of the Premier League, that a club like that can lure away the Celtic manager. But it does bode well. But once again, I just look at the scenario with the Leicester players, similar to what happens at Chelsea as such. Since that incredible title win, seems that those iconic players flex their muscles when they don't play the way they want to play. If anyone tries to evolve the way they play, which you have to do because the way that they won the league is redundant to a certain extent now because teams have learnt to sit deep on Vardy, so you have to have a more controlled possession. Puel tried to do that. The previous managers, Ranieri, even tried to do that. He turned and didn't like it. So Brendan Rodgers coming in now doesn't play that way. He has a philosophy in terms of being expansive football, so it'd be a big test. But there are certainly some young players at Leicester that he'll be excited about, the likes of Maddison, Gray, Chilwell, Barnes, Maguire. So that old guard that did that iconic Premier League win will be phased out soon enough.
Yeah. In terms of his style of play, does it work for a middle-tier Premier League team, and can it get them, I almost don't know what the point of qualifying for the Europa League is, because most Premier League teams in Leicester's situation probably will put out a B team when they get to the Europa League anyway, but is it the type of team who will finish in that 6th to 10th, potentially a 5th over the next couple of seasons?
Well, listen, that's how they think of themselves, and you have to look at the facts at times because you hear a lot of people. You hear even Peter Schmeichel coming out and saying that if they get a better coach, they'll be between 5th and 8th. Well, since they won the title, they've never been 5th, they've never been 6th, and they've rarely been 7th. I think 3 times this season under Puel, once last year they were. But I think they've got ideas of grandeur, to be perfectly honest. I know the owners want to take the club forward, and they've tried to build on that amazing Premier League win, but the reality is I don't see them getting into the top 6.
Do you buy the idea that Claude Puel was this sort of tame, timid manager? It certainly came across that way when he was speaking in front of the media, but I saw a manager who got furious a number of times on the sideline that I'm not really sure if it is like a lack of energy or whatever it may be in the Leicester City dressing room, that there may be a different problem going on here.
Oh yeah, listen, I hope I alluded to it there. I think the players literally, if they don't like the way they're playing, they literally let it be known. They drip feed it into the media. And of course, the supporters will back them all the way because they are their most famous players as such. But I agree with you. I don't think he is timid. Puel certainly wasn't as a player, quite vocal. And I think he is as a manager. But I just think he has a calm demeanour in front of the camera. And perception's so important in modern day football. Probably people take that as a weakness. I don't for one moment believe that. I think the problem ultimately you have at Leicester is that, and similar to Southampton, he finishes 8th in the Premier League, gets them to League Cup final, but he constantly chops and changes the team to the frustration of the players, to the frustration of the supporters, and as a result, it looks like he's a little bit of a tinker man, and that's just the problem that you have, is that he didn't really bond with the players straight away. The flip side of that is you hear Brendan Rodgers, and he puts on his little announcements when he comes in, and he can be a bit sickly at times in terms of how he talks, but certainly he can back it up. I think he is a top manager.
Yeah, for whatever reason, there's always been that. Is it the sickliness? There's just he doesn't have people's faith, I think, just yet as a top manager, even though he took that Liverpool team to within the Steven Gerrard slip of winning the title. People kind of write that off because he had Luis Suarez playing so ridiculously well, also Coutinho, I suppose. So that was there was the bones of a really good team there. He doesn't get any credit for that though, because Suarez is the one who gets the credit. What he does at Celtic, everybody goes, well, it's Celtic and Rangers are a complete joke while he's there. But at the same time, I don't know, he's always I found been quite impressive if you strip away the veneer, and the documentary obviously didn't help. But
yeah, no, listen, I totally agree with you there. You're quite right in terms of I think he probably needs to. He probably would have looked at it and thought he would have potentially been in. I know he talked about being linked to the Arsenal job when Wenger left. That was never going to happen. And obviously his young coaching career at Chelsea has a bond there. Perhaps he'll go in there. But I think he's been quite methodical in thinking, listen, I need to maybe take a step back as such, take a team like Leicester, improve them, and then get on the radar of the other teams. But I do think he's a good manager, and I think there's a body of work that he's been doing since he was a young man. I know he finished his playing career very early, so he's been able to coach for a long time. Initially, he goes into Watford and Reading and can't really put his philosophy on them, struggles, so it looked like he might not get to where he wants to be. But ever since then, I think he has impressed with the clubs he's been with.
Gary, what's your take on, say, some anger from Celtic fans that he's left in the middle of the season or beyond the midway point in the season, coming up to a pivotal trophy-winning point of the year? Like, it seems to me that Brendan Rodgers would know more than most that loyalty can be a two-way street when it comes to football. That did he necessarily need to be loyal to Celtic Football Club, given how he knows that a manager could get sacked any day now?
Well, yes, I understand that, and you would have your mindset that, listen, football does change very quickly within a week, but supporters will quite rightly say about loyalty, the timing just doesn't sit right, does it? It's not a case that Leicester desperately need him to avoid relegation, although the home supporters believe that they were struggling so much that they were in danger of it, especially with teams down the bottom starting to win now. But I think this could have been done in the summer. You just feel that he could have seen the job out at Celtic and then left, and everyone would have said, listen, thank you, you've been brilliant, thank you so much. But the very fact he keeps talking about him being a Celtic manager, I'll do anything for this club, and then you leave at this stage of the season, it doesn't sit well, does it?
No. On the other side, it's great news for Damien Duff. Or is it? If you were Duff, we were asking this question a little bit earlier on, would you prefer to be part of the expanded team at Leicester and have a smaller role, or is it better now at this stage of your career to get a higher role under the interim manager at Celtic?
Well, I think ultimately, Damien, I haven't spoke to him, but I'm sure that in the initial job that he got at Celtic, they've probably been asked to step up now to the first team for the remainder of this season. But I probably think he'll protect that job if he can go back to it. Whether or not Lennon continues, then they can address it then. But I think Damien was quite open in saying I wouldn't really have left Ireland for any other team than Celtic. Certainly at this stage of his coaching career, it's early development, and listen, it's great that he's coming to the forefront. We want to see that, but he's got a long way to go in terms of learning his trade as a coach.
So, essentially, if Lennon doesn't get the gig, then he can go back to the academy or whatever it was.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's a great way to learn your skills. It's something that Brendan Rodgers done. I think at times, too often, players with brilliant careers are given top jobs. They're not ready for it. It's simple as that. You go into coaching, it's totally different. It's a totally different remit. It doesn't matter that you're a top player. That goes out of the window within a week of being in front of those players. You need to learn your craft.
Chelsea are obviously playing tonight for the first time since the situation at the weekend. We were talking about it there. Kepa was fined a week's wages by the board, is how it's been reported. Not fined a week's wages by the manager, not fined a week's wages by the club. It was specifically the board. It does seem as if Sarri's reputation is being damaged by each tiny little cut that happens in the aftermath of the massive thing that happened at the weekend. Does he play him tonight? Does he not play him tonight? Does it matter anymore?
Well, I think it does matter. I would hope that he doesn't play him. Initially, when I saw it all developing, I thought maybe there's a bit of confusion in terms of the fact that they couldn't get the message on that he was okay to continue. But the more you read about it, essentially it looked like they were making a substitution to get Caballero on for penalties because he's a superior keeper at saving them. So for him to dismiss it and not come off, and even the wink to the camera and all that type of stuff, and the result in things like apparently clashing with players, and it's just an absolute mess. The very fact that Azpilicueta, the captain, didn't come over and deal with the situation was a nonsense. And you're just seeing it throughout this Chelsea team. Sarri looked like someone who had real control. I'm a massive admirer of what he'd done at Napoli. I know it took him 18 months to do that. And initially when he came into Chelsea, he started so well. But it's funny that they're playing Tottenham tonight, and ultimately Pochettino is the one that totally dismantled this whole Sarri ball theory. I know that Everton went to Stamford Bridge and negated Jorginho with Sigurdsson putting him on. They got a 0-0 draw, but the way that Tottenham destroyed Chelsea, everyone has followed, and I think there's real problems there. Even the very fact, and I know people might say you're a bit of a killjoy, the way that Hazard took that penalty where if he missed they had lost the cup, to try that chip just shows you everything about Chelsea. They're all about themselves, them players.
Yeah, I mean, it was cool though.
Yeah, listen, it was cool, but if you're a player, you're thinking, just put it in the back of the net. Why even put it at risk like that? It's a nonsense.
Yeah, okay. You don't like the Rabonas generally then? Is that like a...
Yeah, there's a time and a place.
Green rule, yeah. Training, the training ground, is that it?
Well, no, you can do it on the pitch, but I don't know. Listen, I know he's executed it well, but it was the flippancy with it he took in. It just sums them up that he literally felt, well, listen, I miss it. It doesn't really matter. It does matter.
Yeah, okay. the point about the 18 months at Napoli is very important because presumably Chelsea realised this when they signed him, and now they're in the throes of it. Do they just rip this up now because of what's happened and go, yeah, okay, we've got to pick our 80 million goalkeeper over you because ultimately we can get another one of you, but we can't get another one of those?
I know, it's such a similar story at Chelsea. They always seem to be in crisis mode and they cope with it. You know, you can't argue with it. The very fact they've got 15 major trophies in the time that Abramovich has been there, 13 different managers in different disguises, whether it interim, whatever, just shows you that they can cope with this, and it's another story. And you're right, I think you make the decision to get him in saying that they want to evolve, they want to try to play a different style of football. But the managers must look at what's gone before him. Similar to Antonio Conte, he wins the Premier League, then he starts flexing his muscles thinking, well, listen, give me control now. And then when he doesn't, he thinks, well, why not? And you just think, because no manager gets that. The hierarchy make the decisions there. And listen, there could be any announcements in the next couple of days, and either way it went, it wouldn't shock you.
Like, I think what this whole saga has shown us, that you can empower your players to a certain point, but then player power can become dangerous at a certain point. And I think what some managers have shown, including the opposite manager tonight, Maurizio Pochettino, is the positive side of player empowerment and actually kind of showing kind of a loving touch towards your players. But then you read his comments in the newspapers this morning, and it's as hard as I've seen stuff from Maurizio Pochettino saying that they didn't show the will against Burnley, that they didn't deserve anything, that it's going to be a 10-year wait for the Premier League. What they showed on Saturday was that we are a good team, that they have quality, but not enough to win a Premier League title. That is the reality, that they can get up for the big games, but not for the so-called weaker teams in the Premier League. It's harsh stuff from Maurizio Pochettino, showing a sort of mental weakness within this Tottenham team.
It's honest though, isn't it? I think it just sums everything up. And there is an inferiority complex at Tottenham. There always has been. And this is his biggest issue. He's built a brilliant, young, vibrant team, but he can't get them over the line, because they just can't do it. This Spursy tag keeps happening. For them to go and lose at Burnley, when if they'd won, they'd have closed the gap on the leaders to 2 points, and they weren't able to do that. And he's right. I totally agree with him. And people say it's harsh. Sometimes you have to not sometimes, you have to be honest with these players. But those group of players will accept it, I think. I think they'll think, okay, there'll be the mindset where, all right, we'll prove you wrong. And they won't feel any less about their manager, whereas the others, like at Chelsea, at Leicester to a certain extent, are like, no, we don't want to listen to it, get another manager. They all idolise their manager at Tottenham. There's no doubt. Even players who haven't quite been able to make it there, the Masons, that type of guys who got their chance at Tottenham under Pochettino, weren't good enough to stay there, to move on, still talk glowingly about him all the time. He is a top manager.
Yeah, so if you're Pochettino, this is the best work of your life if you can keep it going for a while. Like, there's a strain in me that wants to see what happens if this experiment continues. The new stadium will happen, revenue will increase, their debt ratio will go down. At some point, you would hope the owner and Daniel Levy will realise that if we invest a little bit, we'll actually be worth way more. Suddenly all of the investment would make more sense, and you have genuinely world-class managers. So, like, is it always grass greener, more money, Man United, or whoever that next job for Pochettino is, or is this actually the perfect job?
I think it's the perfect job for him right now, but I can quite easily see him being the man that returns Manchester United back to the top. The problem that Pochettino has is that if he was ever going to take the United job, had to be a clean break after Mourinho. The very fact that Solskjaer's come in now and just rejuvenated the whole club, the supporters love him, he'd be under the type of pressure he doesn't need initially. If there's an indifferent start, that half the crowd or the majority of the crowd will say, well, why didn't you give it to Solskjaer? But I think at 45 years of age, Pochettino's got time. The only problem is the Manchester United job does not come round a lot. The Real Madrid job does. It comes every 2 or 3 seasons. So that will always happen. He'll always be available for that. I don't see his body of work deteriorating to the extent that won't happen again. But the timing is everything. And Manchester United job, if Solskjaer comes in, you look like he could potentially have that for a long time.
Just to touch on United and Liverpool before we wrap, Gary, we'll start with United, and an interesting story this week around Manchester United's fitness. We will have all seen it at Old Trafford on Sunday. So basically, Solskjaer has owned up to the fact that maybe he is responsible for some of the muscle injuries that they've sustained. In terms of statistics, their running has actually gone down from 181 kilometres to 107.7 kilometres under Solskjaer, from Jose to Solskjaer. But the sprints have increased from 98.6 per game to 108.6 per game. They went on a warm weather training camp after a fairly intensive Christmas period, and Solskjaer has basically owned up and said this may be why my players are dropping like flies. Do you think it's fair enough that Solskjaer has done this, because ultimately it has resulted in a fairly quick turnaround in form?
Yeah, I can understand as soon as the manager goes in, you want to get the type of fitness, and there's different types of fitness in terms of being able to play the style you want to play. You're right to say the distance covers has probably dropped down, but that makes perfect sense, those stats you gave me in terms of the sprints, because of the way they set up. They sit deep now, they look to counter-attack, and they've got real verve, real pace when they do it. But that explosive nature is not something we saw under Mourinho. They were plodding along a lot, weren't they? At times, the centre-forward was being isolated so often, the midfield couldn't get in advanced areas of them. And that is maybe one of the reasons. But I think it just comes to a stage of the season now, as you quite rightly said, after a hectic Christmas period, that players do pick up injuries. It's just the way it is. And I think at times, when there is a lull, maybe if you go 10 days without a game, most coaches will do a little bit of a mini pre-season just to get some more energy into their legs, some more stamina for the remainder of the season. And unfortunately, it hasn't quite worked out for them.
Liverpool are up against Watford tonight. Watford, one of those teams that have had, by their standards, a brilliant season and coming off, some good performances just recently. So it's the type of tricky game that you kind of would prefer. Different stages of the year. You want one of those teams who are reeling at the moment. Cardiff would have been the perfect game for Liverpool tonight.
Yeah, listen, a lot of Liverpool fans would like to pick and choose their games right now, but you're right, it'd be a tough challenge against Watford. Gracia has been so impressive, and it looks a natural fit. This is a coach who has had a bit of a nomadic existence, had so many jobs all over Europe, and obviously Watford hire and fire him so quickly, but they look like they're a good match. And he's done so impressive. Look like they really could now challenge and nail that 7th position, especially with Wolves surprisingly losing to Huddersfield last night. But there's a physicality about Watford. They'll ask questions of Liverpool. They really will. And they'll have to stand up and be counted. But ultimately, if you're looking to win the title, you've got to be able to beat Watford. Simple as that.
Are they playing well enough at the moment? Because there's Andy Robertson was making the point that it was Bayern Munich and Manchester United who had thwarted their attacking prowess. Two pretty big clubs in world football, so that they shouldn't be panicked just yet. I can understand that he's like talking himself into it, and I can also understand that he's got a bit of a point.
Yeah, listen, there's so much been made about the front three maybe misfiring a little bit, bearing in mind the amount of goals they got last season. But the way they play has evolved. And they had to, because the opposition are not going to give you that space for Salah to run in behind. They're defending deep. So the problem Liverpool have maybe at this stage is they lack that creative player in midfield. They certainly lack a goal scorer in midfield. I think they got 6 goals from midfield from all their different options. That's not good enough. And it's in stark contrast to, if you think, to City, the likes of De Bruyne. I know he's had injury problems, but Silva, the creativity they have, the goal threat that they have. But obviously Liverpool play a different way. They have to manage it. They have to get through it. And what they have got now is a defence that means they only need the 1 goal to win games. And that's what is so impressive. And that is the reason why they're so close to this elusive Premier League title.
Yeah, and do you just expect that the form City are in at the minute that they roll over West Ham tonight?
I think the fact that it's at the Etihad, I think West Ham will struggle. I really do. I think at times they lack a little bit of athleticism. I know they're slowly trying to change that with Declan Rice, some younger bodies in there, but I just think City will be too good for them.
All right, good stuff, Gary. Thanks a million.
Thanks, lads.
John Walters is going to be on update duty for us tonight from the Etihad from that game. So that's pretty interesting. Good timing, because it's just in the papers today that it looks like he's going to be back before the end of the season.
Yeah, interesting stuff in the papers as well today from Jurgen Klopp saying that this is the first chance for Liverpool to win the Premier League title, not the last chance. So it depends how you view that. Like the glass half full person would say, well, he's already starting to think about the possibility that they will not win the Premier League title. Well, but then that's the glass half empty person. The glass half full person would say to themselves, well, we've got tons of exciting years coming up.
Well, they do, right? If everybody just calms down a little bit, and it's like there's he's not a manager who you automatically link with other jobs, right? The only other jobs in world football that you would automatically link him with in the past might have been somehow going to Bayern. I don't think that's going to happen. And the German job, why the hell would he take that? He doesn't need to. He can do that at any point in his life.
Yeah.
So he's found his perfect place. It's like if Spurs were just a little bit bigger and Pochettino was there now, he'd be there for life.
Let me ask you a question. How better do you think, on paper, how better do you think this Liverpool squad is to last year's squad? Like I would say they've made a slight improvement. Like Virgil van Dijk is obviously a hugely significant player, but it is still
at the start of the season and the end of the season.
Let's roll back to the midway point of last season.
Midway point
before they signed Van Dijk.
Way better. They have a goalkeeper they trust. They have Van Dijk.
Yeah, no, fair.
Now, the only thing is Salah's not at the World Footballer of the Year level that he was.
Well, Wijnaldum has become an absolutely top-class midfielder this season. Fabinho's been a very, very good addition, in my view.
Yeah, so they're way better then.
Yeah, like, and that kind of points to the fact why we need to kind of actually appreciate what an excellent season this has been for them. Because you look at where they were last year, what was it, 4th place?
27 points behind City.
25 points behind Manchester City. Previous year, 4th place, 17 points off Chelsea. The previous year to that, 8th, 21 points off top.
Big issues are the potential that Salah goes somewhere. But again, I suppose he could join Real Madrid. He could join Barcelona if Barcelona were to move on from Leo Messi, but that's not going to happen. So
Barcelona are going to move on from Luis Suarez at a certain point.
Yeah, maybe. Could he play with Messi? I mean, don't they like to take up similar-ish positions?
You throw enough quality at a team and it might make it better, who knows? I don't think it makes sense personally. If you had a dream team in the world, you're not going to sign Salah for that position. But stranger things have definitely happened in terms of an attacking player that is, I wouldn't say he's gettable or I wouldn't say he's available or anything like that, but you could do a lot worse than just firing him in there.